Welcome back, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed that short break and your whole day with us so far. Hope the promises that I started off this morning were kept mostly. And of course, whenever you want to revisit today in video or other media with photos or texts or links, you can do that in the FFW studio. And I was told around 5:30 p.m. today, the videos of most of the panels and talks and presentations will be available through the Fashion Sustain social channels. So if you want to rebrush what you missed or re-see things that we streamed to you, you can always do that. On to another highlight of today, a special on the never-ending love story between cotton and denim. Sometimes it's more complicated, especially nowadays. And this starts off a segment brought to you and us by our partner Transformers Foundation. Transformers Foundation is an NGO started by Kingpins. Most of you will know what Kingpins is. I had to look that up, and I found it's a legendary jeans supply chain trade show that first premiered in New York 2004. And the Transformers Foundation that was is like a sidekick to the fair, showcases sustainable innovations and further enables change makers, brands, retailers, consumers, and students in the denim space to work together towards a more environmentally friendly denim industry. And we kick things off with a conversation between Marzia Lanfranchi. She's the intelligence director of the Transformers Foundation, and she's in conversation with independent cotton expert Simon Ferrigno. And after that, we will have another interesting panel, actually with panelists from around the globe, on the insider perspective on cotton, and Marzia will also be the moderator for that. Have fun, learn a lot about that little thing, cotton, that is like a thread through all our lives, and I'll see you right back afterwards.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marzia Lanfranchi. I'm the Intelligence Director at Transformer Foundation, which is a not-for-profit representing the denim industry and its ideas for positive change. I'm also the founder of Cotton Diaries, which is a global community of cotton experts and researchers committed to making cotton supply chains more sustainable. We're here today because we're partnering with Fashion Sustain, with Transformers Foundation, on a series of talks about sustainability. And since one of the core missions at our foundation is to get down to the truth around the issues that affect our industry and shed a light on sustainable practices, our topic today is cotton. If you're tuning in right now, is because you probably have had some unsolved questions, or you've been confused about some of the claims that have been made around cotton, and you want to learn more. Today, we are so lucky to have Simon Ferrigno here. I would define him as one of the brightest minds I've came across during my career in fashion sustainability, and he is someone that opened my eyes and ears to the nuanced narratives around cotton sustainability. And as Transformers Foundation, we wanted to invite the audience here today to also open their eyes and ears to the truth around the most used natural fiber in denim and the apparel sector at large. So Simon, welcome. And I'm so happy to have you today. And if you can please briefly introduce yourself, since I gave a little bit of a hint of who you are. I'd say you're in a super interesting space in the industry, specifically for cotton. So how was that you came to occupy the space that you do, and what does it look like from where you sit?
Thank you, Marzia. Well, I've been working in the cotton and sustainability space since the year 2000. I initially was working for Pesticide Action Network. they'd spent a number of years looking at the problems of cotton and pesticide use and the impacts they had on human and environmental health. But they had also been promoting alternatives, especially organic cotton at the time. And I was brought in especially to look at the possibilities for encouraging the textile sector to start using more sustainable cotton and to start addressing the problems in the supply chain. And this was really interesting. PAN is already a very interesting organization because it's an international network. It's not a single organization of over 600 members in many, many countries, producing countries and consuming countries. So that was all, we started the conversation in the UK and Europe around consumption, working pan-UK and pan-Germany in particular with pan-Africa. From there, I then went independent and freelance, working for NGOs, businesses and others, helping people solve the problems of sustainability. And I started writing about this as well for Eco Textile News, which is an international magazine that's been going for over 10 years now. So yeah, this is how I got here.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And I bet that some of the people that are gonna tune in would love to hear more about your perspective on the systems of cotton, so from seed to shelf. And you talked about sustainable cotton, and I know that different organizations focus on different stakeholder leverage points. So today with you, I wanted to explore more around the question that there are a number of different organizations that certify to some sustainability standards. So what are these organizations? Why do they exist? And what role do they play in creating a more sustainable and ethical cotton industry?
The original one is organic. Now in fiber production, there's no specific organic cotton certification. There's organic agriculture. Organic agriculture certification just recognizes you don't grow just one crop, you grow a multitude of crops. And to be sustainable, that is often critical. Anybody who knows in a garden, if you just put one plant, it's going to get eaten by one thing. Crop diversity is one of the key ingredients for sustainability. So organic cotton. The next one that came on the scene was fair trade cotton in the early 2000s, which was beginning to look at the social labor problems more specifically. To this day, fair trade works closely with organic. There's a lot of jointly certified organic and fair trade cotton. There is also better cotton, cotton made in Africa. We also these days have My BNP, an Australian program, initiatives in Brazil, United States and elsewhere, all trying to make cotton more sustainable by reducing the use of pesticides, trying to make water use more efficient, and so on. And it's becoming quite confusing for brands to know what is really sustainable. It also means there's a lot of competition and a lot of time spent or wasted by mutual criticism between some of these standards. So there's a need to move the conversation forward a little bit more now to say, what are the big problems we're trying to address? How are they different in different regions, and how can we address specifically local problems as they emerge?
To take a step back, why do this initiative actually was brought into the cotton industry? What was the initiation of like what was the reason why they emerged?
To take just two examples. So first, organic cotton emerged as a way to prove that you could grow cotton without pesticides, because that was the big problem in the late 80s and early 90s. The overuse of pesticides was the major problem. So what you wanted to do, what organizations like Pesticide Action Network or initiatives like BioRay wanted to do was show you can grow cotton without pesticides. It was that simple. Later on, Better Cotton came along and they said the problem with organic cotton is that it's not growing big enough. We need to show that you can grow cotton with lower impacts on a large scale, which to a degree they've managed to do with the open question of how much better is it than if we'd left things up to say the various national initiatives or FAO initiatives. But so they're the two questions that people have tried to answer.
And so right now, what role do they actually play, all these initiatives in creating what we call it a more sustainable and ethical cotton industry specifically?
Well, so of course you can't really call organic an initiative because there's various organizations who promote organic cotton growing, but they are there still trying to show that you can make a difference with organic agriculture. And of course you can, every sort of hectare that's grown organically has environmental benefits. Better Cotton is still there trying to show that you can reach scale while attempting to make things better. So they do play a role. My question now these days, though, is whether compartmentalized standards are still the way forward, because there's always an element of competition between them and a risk that they divert resources from each other or from other initiatives when we know we're at a critical point in the sustainability fight around climate change. We have a very narrow window of action left to keep temperatures to the Paris Accords of less than 2 degrees of warming and preferably 1.5. And we're not going to achieve that if we keep trying to say this is the only answer or that is not the answer, or we're going to take so many years to do impact assessments when we should be saying this is the problem, this is what we have to do in different regions to reach our targets and address them. And we also, with standards take a long time to revise, and when a new problem emerges, such as labor abuses in Xinjiang, we need to be able to move much faster to find solutions to what's happening than just saying we're going to take 3 or 5 years to revise our standards or 2 years to stop being involved in a region. We need much more flexibility I think, now.
If I'm understanding right, so there's all these initiatives, organizations that are working to some degree to a sustainability standard, and then there's the role of brands. So I was gonna try to understand with you today more what roles could brands play, or they currently play actually in creating a more sustainable and ethical cotton industry, and what role they could play.
Mm-hmm. Well, they can play quite a big role in terms of making change happen. The bigger brands in particular have the clout, financial, and in terms of leadership to make things happen quickly. So if I use one example, so there's been an announcement that Better Cotton have started piloting soil testing and monitoring soil carbon sequestration. Well, I was involved with a brand that 7 years ago started soil testing and showing that you can start to detect carbon sequestration. So that 7 years gap, that's the difference that brands can make. They can start doing something working in their supply chains to do that. The problem is not many brands have decided to be leaders because it's a very uncomfortable position, because you're going to be the focal point for criticism when you get it wrong. Then a lot of brands are quite happy to hide behind the coattails of standards to say, well, look, we're doing something, we're part of this or that initiative, usually many of them. So we're doing enough. So it needs a lot more. It needs a lot of courage to do that, but they can. And I think with the arrival of laws like the French devoir de vigilance law, which requires companies to actively look into their supply chains, identify problems and solve them, or risk litigation from people who are victims to, say, environmental catastrophe or human rights abuses. That is a good start. It looks like the European Union might legislate. Potentially now with a new administration in the United States, there may be things happening there as well. If we have the right legal framework, potentially if we have the right financial framework, then brands might be more encouraged to try things, to make those innovations.
Right. And so there's, again, there's brand initiatives, standards, you mentioned governments, but then what is the role actually of this supply chain?
The supply chain is, they do a lot. In fact, some supply chains, that there's a lot of manufacturers, if you travel around, I'm sure you've seen some of them as well, Marzia, who do a lot. So if you take in India, a lot of the organic farming, some of the Better Cotton farming is in cooperation with local manufacturers. So a lot of manufacturers have done a lot. They facilitate the audits that a lot of brands require, despite this being quite challenging because they're always under pressure to cut their costs at the same time as they're under pressure to increase transparency, audits, and verification that they do. They can do more though. They can help brands understand what the realities are on the ground. And it's going back to the corporate due diligence laws, where technically the costs have to be borne by the brands to find a user, not supply chain. They can do more. because one of the problems they have at the moment is that brands pass the cost of auditing or traceability to the supply chain rather than taking them on themselves. So yeah, they do play a role.
And since you mentioned big brands, but actually, and I can see how they can leverage more work on the ground. But I wonder, since I think that Fashion Sustain audience also includes small brands, is there a space for startups or small brands or niche brands also to play? Do you see it?
Absolutely. Well, I think down the years, again, we've seen a lot of small brands who have been pioneers. Ones I remember from 20 years ago when I was getting started, that brands like People Tree, they were the game changers. And they showed people how to do it, and they could reinvent things. They weren't tied to these big behemoths of supply chains or ways of doing things that have been nurtured over decades. They could just do things differently, work with small suppliers, build new production facilities. So there is absolutely space for them to do things.
Yeah,
And,
that's really encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I think it's very inspiring that everybody can play a role, although like we need to keep in mind is that change needs to happen fast and the clock is ticking. But I wanted to take a turn in this conversation and actually explore some of the work they've been doing together. Simon, for everybody, we're currently working together with Simon on a piece of work that investigates cotton and data and debunks some of the most common claims and myths around cotton. And today I wanted to ask you, Simon, what are some of the most common myths that the fashion industry needs to debunk, and why do we need to debunk these myths?
I think the earliest one I came across was the one that says cotton uses 25% of the world's pesticides, or sometimes that's transposed as insecticide, and that's never been accurate. When I came in to work at Pan, the figure we used was 22.5 of all pesticides, but that figure was already out of date. That was a figure that actually dates back probably to the 1980s. 10.9% of the world's pesticides, 22.5% of insecticides. That was the crisis that led to Pan and others starting to want to show that you could grow cotton without so many pesticides. By the time I came on in the early 2000s, that figure was way out of date, and it was a problem because people in the industry always felt on the defensive because they were always being attacked with a figure that wasn't accurate, and they weren't able to communicate actually there have been improvements. And this is why data accuracy is so important, because once you agree on the real figure, the true problem, not in the past, but now, you can agree on what still needs to be done to improve that. So in fact, while those defensive postures were happening outside, internally, when I went to meetings at the International Cotton Advisory Committee and others, people were talking about the possibility to reduce the use of pesticides even further. So data accuracy means dialogue is possible between different ends or competing parts of a supply chain or an industry to agree a starting point. That conversation has been had again recently with Pesticide Action Network putting out a report on the use of chemicals in cotton today. So again, we have the accurate figures from a couple of years ago. From that point on, we can have a dialogue in the sector about how much more can be achieved and how we can achieve it.
Yeah, so we did the example of pesticides, but then I think one of the key ones is also around water, if I'm correct. Yeah.
So again, there's a lot of discussion. So 20,000 liters of water to make one T-shirt and a pair of jeans, something we hear commonly. But that does not reflect the reality of the diversity of cotton production systems, nor does it reflect the source of the water, because some regions are water stressed, some regions have plenty of water, some regions have sufficient irrigation, some have competing demands for irrigation. So it's an average. A global average in cotton is quite meaningless. It's like saying the average, if somebody calculated the average wage of a cotton laborer, they would probably come with something quite low, because you're taking the wages of people in India, the United States, Australia, where the cost of living is vastly different and would not in any case reflect either the diversity of diet or food availability and so on. So it can be a discussion point that came up in a recent meeting. but otherwise it is meaningless. What you have to do with data is look at what it tells you about a given region and what the problems are. So if you go and look at say one country I know well, northern Benin is a very dry area, and if you were using 20,000 liters of irrigated water, it would be a problem. In fact, you probably wouldn't have it. It's a rain-fed area, but it is water stress. So you would have to look at what is the impact of cotton growing on water availability for different parties. You would also have to look at what you could do about it. And in fact, I have led work in Malawi looking at that, so highly water-stressed region. But in fact, during the rainy season, plenty of water. The problem is it passes through so quickly, there isn't always time to both grow cotton and food. So you have to look at ways of potentially recovering some of that water so that farmers have a reserve they can use later on for growing vegetables, or diverting some of that so that they can irrigate growth of trees, papaya in particular, all of which can be done very cheaply, none of which says you shouldn't grow cotton. It's all about managing the water you have available. In other regions, you may have actually a lot of irrigation efficiency, but you will still be depleting the water tables because you're taking irrigated water. So the question comes down to not how much water you are using, but how sustainable that water use is. So a 20,000 liters of water figure is meaningless. You have to look at each context.
And you really taught me that the conversation around cotton biggest claims around pesticide use and water, etc., are really meaningless unless we go deeper. And we use these figures maybe as a conversation openers, but then we go beyond them. So what do you want the industry professional within brands that often maybe come across these figures and don't go deeper than that to actually know about cotton and the cotton supply chain that they may not be aware of?
Well, I think they need to understand the reality of the supply chain and of each different party within it, but they also need to be critical, not to accept what they're given. And specifically, I think it means now for each brand is look at your own supply chain, look at what's happening in it, ask the question, send people to find out, and then see what it is you need to address. Because you may hear a specific figure, say you source a lot in India, and you will hear specific things, but actually India's a vast country. You need to look at what region is your cotton coming from, where are your suppliers based, and then ask the question, what are the major problems and what can I do to make them better working with my partners in the industry? Further, I would say with the overarching things in head of how am I going to address climate change, the climate crisis with this, and how am I going to deal with some of the bigger human rights issues that might emerge as well, particularly if I'm sourcing, say, from China or Central Asia or elsewhere.
And so I'm guessing there's a role for transparency and traceability here. Can you please tell us a little bit more about what influence and what role transparency and traceability can play on this specific matter?
So core thing that traceability can do is it's a source of data. So it can tell you if you're doing it, all the way through. It can give you the data for your supply chain on water use, on pesticide use, on average wages, on whether you're achieving a living income. Transparency also means you know pretty much what people are doing at each stage of the supply chain, whether they're getting a fair return for what they're doing, making a good contribution. Of course, it can be a double-edged sword because traceability or transparency, that data can be used, as anybody probably who works for Amazon knows, it means that they're going to start harassing you to eat particular types of food so that you can work faster, or monitoring how many times you have a loo break. So we have to be a little bit careful with that. But data is the main thing it can do. It also means as a brand, having that data means that if somebody comes to you and says, you might be involved in something like this, you know immediately whether or not that's true, but you also know whether you're doing anything about it. It also means that if a new problem does emerge, you already have the information, hopefully, to start dealing with.
And I think, so I think we touched on almost all the points I wanted to touch on. But there's one further question that I have. What are we actually missing from the approach we have so far to actually achieve the speed of change?
Yeah, I think we're missing, one is a sense of urgency, but part of that comes from critical mass. something that comes up a lot is that when you look at it, it's the same names that crop up time and time and time again who are taking the leadership role, and the much larger number of people who are just following what's happening or relying on multi-stakeholder initiatives or standards to tell them what to do. And we need that critical mass of brands, manufacturers, and others to act. And some of that does come from government leadership or large organizations, so multilateral platform leadership. So that's why we need that European Union legislation. We need the United States to be legislating about some of these things. We need other organizations to take it on as well. We need to fund United Nations agencies who should be able to do some of the work we need, because otherwise we just are always 5 to 10 years behind where we should be on action. And that's just sense of urgency. And there's a good book that's been out not very long called The Decade We Could Have Stopped Climate Change, which I would urge everybody to read, because a lot of what we need to do, we knew back in the 1980s, which just gives a sense of how far behind we are where we could have been.
And so for the audience that is listening, I wanted to have maybe one closing question to be honest with you, on what is the number one question that you are asking the industry right now in order to achieve real change first, and what is the number one question we should all try to be answer as an industry?
Well, I think that one would be around climate change. I would like two ideally, because it's not that, if you ask me for just one, it's that. Is this going to get us anywhere near the Paris targets within a decade? And probably from that do flow some of the things for the other question, which is this improving human rights and good governance?
These are really two good questions that I urge everybody to look into. Simon, our time is up, but I really, really thank you for this interesting conversation. I always get the chance to learn. And hopefully everybody else who joined learned something today. So thank you.
Thank you, Marzia. Bye.
Bye. Hello, everybody. Got the time apparently to change. That was actually pre-recorded. It was a brilliant interview with Simon Ferrigno. So I reintroduced myself for the ones that haven't listened to the first part of the last panel. I'm Marzia. I'm the Intelligence Director at Transformers Foundation. Transformers is a not-for-profit representing the denim industry and its ideas of positive change. It was founded to provide a missing platform to the jeans and denim supply chain and a central point of contact for consumers, brands, NGOs, and the media who want to learn more about ethics and sustainable innovation in the industry. We do represent the denim supply chain, meaning from farmers to chemical suppliers to denim mills and jeans factories. And today I'm here with some of the smartest insiders in the cotton and jeans industry, and who are here to make real and meaningful change happen, and are joining across many time zones. And so I'm really thankful for having them all. And without further delaying our introductions to the fabulous guests that we have today, I would let our guests introduce themselves and let them in the room. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. So we have only 60 seconds for each to tell me, who are you? What role do you hold in the denim industry? And where you're currently connecting from? I would like to start with Sedef, please.
Hi, thank you, Marzia. I am Sedef, working for Orta. It's a very renowned denim fabric manufacturer located in Turkey. Our factory is in the central Anatolia in Turkey. And I am now connecting from Istanbul, Turkey. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Great. It's great to have you. Next, I would like to give the mic to Will, who's calling all the way from
Australia. Thank you for having me. Calling in from Moree, Australia. I'm part of the agronomy team at Sundown Pastoral Company and the Good Earth Cotton brand. Worked with Sundown since 2009 and had a widespread of involvement with everything on the farm, from growing cotton, watering it. Now my focus is on the agronomy side, so promoting plant health, understanding healthier soils, carbon sequestration, and overall more efficient agronomic decisions.
It's amazing to have you here. I know it's very, very late there. So thank you for being with us. Crispin, where are you calling from today?
Calling from Wisconsin, USA.
Wow. And please introduce
Yeah.
yourself.
Sure. I'm Chris Argento, although I'm based in Amsterdam. I'm the managing director of the Sourcery. Sourcery connects brands and suppliers directly with leading farmers who are committed to advancing commercial and environmental excellence.
Wow, that sounds great. We'll get more into that later. Keshav, Dr. Kranthi, I should have said that for Sedef as well. I think almost everybody's a doctor here, except for me. Please introduce us.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you, Marzia. My name is Keshav Kranthi, and I work as the Chief Scientist at the International Cotton Advisory Committee. We are located in Washington, D.C. ICAC is an intergovernmental panel with about 30 members, and our members are countries. I have about 32 years of experience in cotton, working with farmers on the ground, as well as in the lab, as a biotechnologist and as an entomologist, as a crop protection specialist. I joined the ICAC in 2017. And before that, I worked as the director of the Central Institute for Cotton Research in India for about 27 years. And I'm pretty excited about sustainability and where we are going. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. I think it doesn't happen often that we have such high technical team with such a broad range of experiences. So I'm so excited to have you all. And so we're being very ambitious. So I'll try to keep, please, let's try to keep every answer a bit short and concise. But let's start. So I wanted to talk to Sedef about the role of cotton and denim first. How important is cotton for the denim industry, and how do you see the demand in the next 2, 5, or 10 years time?
Well, cotton has been the main fiber of denim from the very beginning. And for many years, it was just 100% cotton. And when elastane usage increased for other fabric specifics, then denim producers also started to use elastane. We've started to use elastane at the beginning of 2000s, and we're also using other fibers like linen, tensile, modal, polyester, T400 going forward. But I can still say that cotton is our main fiber in the construction. So it is really very important to us and also for the denim industry. And at Orta, we manage cotton at the director level. So we have a cotton director in-house, Mr. Leon, most of you most probably know. We are very well known with our authentic denim fabrics, like 100% rigid and cotton elastane fabrics, but always in search of better solutions for the most ethical and environmentally friendly denim. So today, when we design a product, we examine all the life cycle stages of the product, our choices, how it will be affected, the performance of the fabric, the environmental impacts, the lifespan of the garment, and end-of-life solutions as well at the very end. And when we look at our production in the last 5 years, I really would like to answer your question from a mill perspective, from our perspective. The regular cotton or cotton elastane 98-2 fabrics used to have 60% of the share in our total sales, and the rest, the special blends and sustainable fabrics, used to have 40%. And when you look at now, 2021, this percentage is reversed. like 40, even like 30 to 70, I can say right now we're selling. So from regular cotton, there is a shift towards more sustainable resources and also special blends. We definitely see an increase in certified cotton, like PCI cotton, organic cotton, recycled cotton, of course. And when we even compare the year before pandemic, 2019, we see a growth in organic cotton sales. We see a higher growth in recycled cotton fabric, like denim fabric sales. We also see an increase in regenerative fiber blends, and also our hemp consumption has been doubled. Why am I sharing the other fibers like tencel, modal, and hemp? Because you asked about the future. And we've been trying to find alternatives to cotton in terms, because cotton has a higher environmental impact, especially considering the water usage and like chemical usage. So, but
we'll get into
know,
that later.
I know. Yeah, but we really know that cotton will stay as our main fiber always, because on one hand, the supply of these alternative fibers are fairly small, and it cannot reach to like cotton level in the next 10 years, that's for sure. And on the other hand, cotton defines denim. So that's why we definitely need to find better ways, alternative ways to make cotton more sustainable.
Right.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And also, certified traceable cotton will be required in the near future. And I hope we can form a way to recycle cotton better, even like mechanically, chemically, or biologically. And right now, recently, we're talking a lot about regenerative cotton. So that will gradually increase as the system embraces regenerative farming. That's how we see from a mill's perspective.
Thank you for sharing, Sedef. It's a really nice segue to actually my questions to Keshav, to understanding how much cotton is actually produced globally, and how many people are involved in the cotton farming around the world and in the cotton industry, just to understand the scale of this industry.
Thank you, Marzia. Annually, about 25 million tons of cotton fibers are produced. I mean, over the past 10 years, the average is somewhere around 25.6 million tons, but it varies from 23 million tons to 26 million tons every year. And in terms of the number of people who are involved in production, there are about 22 to 28 million farmers who are owners of land. Now, these numbers, they fluctuate every year. They change every year depending on which country, let's say, has more area. In China, Pakistan, India, if the area goes down, and so does the number of farmers. But then this is about the owners, which is 22 or 23 million farmers. They're owners of the lands. But if you're looking at the people who are actually involved in production as laborers, as people who are employed, now that gets to about 200 million persons who actually work. But then when you calculate in terms of man days, it comes to 2.6 billion man days, which translates to about 7.1 million persons having full annual employment. So, I mean, in short, the number of, in terms of the total employment, I would say about 30 million persons get complete annual employment from cotton, from the fields, like at the production level. To the second question on like how many people are actually involved in the industry, these numbers are highly variable. We tried very hard at the ICAC to calculate, and the closest that we could get was about 250 million persons. Now, what it means is, in general, 1 ton of cotton fiber provides employment, full-time employment, annual employment for 5 persons. So it is, if I'm talking of 25 million tons, it is 125 million persons directly employed. There is something which is called indirect employment. Indirect employment, it is, whether it is trade or the laborers who are and so on. So that gets to, let's say, like another 100 million. We have these data from different countries. We put them together. So overall, you could say about 250 million persons are dependent on cotton
Wow.
for their employment.
Thanks, Keshav. I think it's super insightful in order for us to get to the understanding of the impact that cotton can have on society. And as you mentioned, Sedef, on the environment as well. And since you touched upon the topic of water and cotton, I wanted to play a video to introduce us to the next topic, which is water and cotton. So if the technical team can play the video now, please.
That it's not that people don't care, we're just not informed.
Right. I think she ended up really well. We're not informed. And this is why I want to do my question to Will, who's actually an agronomist and has been working with cotton and water matters for quite a few years, I'd say. How do you feel about the video? And also the following question would be, we understand there is often a misconception that growing cotton takes away from drinking water, as we could see here. Does it actually work this way? Can you please share?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Look, I think it's a very misinformed topic, and unfortunately, I think cotton takes a particularly bad rap. It's very region and country specific. I know here in Australia we have both irrigated and dryland cotton, which is rain-fed, and the two systems play out very differently in the outcome of effectiveness and productivity. In our valley, we've got a dam that was a purpose-built dam in the 1960s and 70s, and the sole purpose was for the expansion of the Australian food bowl to develop regional Australia, food and fibre. Cotton's coming about because of that. Whilst that was the purpose of these dams being built, first and foremost, the first priority goes to livestock and domestic, so human consumption, water, for livestock, all those sorts of things. The second is for the environment, so to keep the rivers flowing so the aquatic ecosystems can stay healthy. And thirdly, there's water allocated to the farmers for irrigation. So only when there is deemed sufficient water within these catchment areas are we allowed to use water to irrigate crops. So the idea, I know here, that it takes away from drinking water is completely wrong.
Thanks for sharing, Will. And Keshav, I know that this video makes you mad, and we talked about it many times. What's wrong with it, and how much water does cotton actually use? If you can keep your answer fairly brief, because I want to go through a lot of other topics afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, Marzia. What is wrong with the video is it is just a misconception again. It is like how much of water is used. As long as people are not deprived of a common source, I don't think there's any point in arguing about this. First of all, agriculture needs irrigation, and from that water we are producing food and fiber for population. Now, how much of water does cotton actually use? There are two terms. One is, like it's called water use, and the other, in fact, like it's called water consumption. Like our calculations from like for the major cotton growing countries, it brings us to an estimate which is closer to about 1600. I mean, sometimes it is 1200 liters of water, sometimes it is 1900 liters of water, depending on how much of water was withdrawn. But this is only about the water use and not water consumption. If I calculate based on water consumption, it would come somewhere closer to 1500 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of fiber, 1500 liters of irrigation water. I mean, that is, so it is, I think when someone says 20,000 liters, 10,000 liters, they're gross, they're just way off the mark.
Thanks for sharing that. And so I think it's a nice way to introduce the topics of sustainability. Water is one of the issues that are often discussed, misunderstood by these industries. But what are actually cotton sustainability challenges, and how are these challenges being addressed right now? Crispin, I want to bring you in for that. From a consultancy perspective, and also from a long-time collaborator with a cotton-related NGO, what's your view on cotton sustainability?
Well, I think, Marzia, I think the biggest challenges facing the sustainable cotton industry, or cotton in general, but really the sustainable cotton industry, are wrapped up in three words. That's transparency, truth, and impact. These are things that we're talking about on this session here. And I think, unfortunately, the sustainable cotton industry has aligned itself much closer to marketing interests than truly advancing commercial farming or agronomic and livelihood interests of fiber and farmers, and of course downstream actors. As Sedef mentioned, cotton is an essential part of denim. It's an essential part of all clothing. It's the most versatile of all fibers. And yes, does it have an impact? And to compare fiber to one fiber to another when the data is poor to begin with is not constructive. But I think as we look at sustainable cotton, we have to shift from the marketing side of it to delivering more impact. And from our perspective at Sourcery, that requires more than signing a pledge, setting fiber volume targets, many of which are not realistic for brands to go 100% sustainable cotton by 2025, for example. Collecting claim units in the BCI model, or collecting certificates in the organic model, or et cetera, et cetera. But it really is about turning ambition into deliberate action. I think by adopting new approaches to sourcing and securing sustainable cotton, and actually investing in farmers themselves. This is one of the reasons why we started Sourcery and built our direct to grower program, because we found that there is this huge gap between the brand's demand for sustainable cotton and the supply of it. And so, as you alluded to, I prior to running Sourcery, yeah.
I wanted to stop you there 1 second, because you went a step ahead of us, talking about sustainable cotton industry. That I was trying to unpack first just the sustainability challenges that cotton as an industry has. So maybe, and then we go back to your direct to grower program, which is something that I really want to unpack.
Sure.
And Will, from an agronomist perspective, what are cotton's most hottest issues for sustainability?
Depends what you define as sustainability. Look, I see from the agronomic perspective, a growing population that needs to be clothed and fed. So as farmers, it's probably in our best interest to be more efficient at how we are growing these crops. And that means water use efficiency, healthier soils, carbon sequestration, enhanced biodiversity, minimizing our inputs whilst increasing outputs. Like land is not something, it's in fact diminishing, yet we're asked to produce more commodities than ever. So, yeah.
Right, thank you. And Sedef, from a meal perspective, you touched upon working with certifications, but what are the problems that you're tackling most?
So I don't want to get into the sustainable cotton part, as you say. Crispin will continue from there. So the main expectation from the brands, as we see today, is mainly traceability, like transparency and traceability in cotton sourcing. And why is that? Because, as you say, as the video mentions, cotton has a bad reputation. There are a lot of numbers out there, and we know most of them are wrong. And I think Transformers Foundation did a great job about myths about cotton. I mean, the ones who didn't see should really visit the Transformers Foundation and see what is the myth and what is the real. But although numbers are exaggerated most of the times, and the result differs based on the region the cotton is grown. Even in the same region, from farmer to farmer, it differs. We've been seeing bad examples that is causing like drought or like forced labor, or I don't know, like loss of biodiversity when we talk about cotton. So today, in addition to this bad reputation, cotton has to fight with the climate change, and also there's a price pressure coming from the top tier of the value chain right now. So because of that bad reputation, brands really want to control and trace the cotton and also the other raw materials in the system. And they want to know if it is sourced from like responsible farmers or like sources, how it is grown, where exactly it is grown, by whom it is grown. So these are the questions that they've been asking to us. Certification systems such as BCI GOTS, they to some extent provide that, but still cotton has a very complex supply chain. There are many parties involved in it, like small farmers, big farmers, traders, ginners, cooperatives. Like there's really a complex supply chain. So today, I think we are seeing a very promising traceability technologies, including nanoscale marking and DNA marking. So it is really promising. And as a meal, okay, so that's fine.
Thank you, Sedef. But now, because I'll just stop you there because we're going to talk about traceability because it is a hot topic and it is what it is now required for the industry. We don't have visibility on who makes our cotton yet. Some mills do, some to a certain extent, like yours, you work direct to farm. But Keshav, I want to give a last chance for you to comment on cotton sustainability challenges and how are they currently being addressed, please.
The biggest challenge that I see now, it's actually the methods of measurement. We are unable to measure sustainability metrics properly. I mean, that's a big challenge. The other challenge is on the ground, obviously related to climate change. One, it is the soil, the degrading soils across the world. That's the biggest challenge that as scientists, like what are we able to do? And in terms of agrochemicals, use of nitrogen is actually the biggest contributor to climate change in terms of emissions. And nitrogen use is constantly, it's on the rise. Now, the other most important thing is the pesticides. It's about the highly hazardous pesticides being used in the least developed countries and the developing countries and also the developed countries. It is the amounts that they're being pumped into the soil and the harm that they cause to biodiversity. And finally, I think it's also about like how well we manage our waters, whether it's irrigation water or rainwater. Are we able to capture them? Are we able to conserve them? And not to ignore the aspect of social dynamics, like in cotton production. I think the issues related to exploitation and to human rights are also extremely important. Cotton is a labor-intensive crop, at least in the developing countries and the least developed countries, and one must be alert to the fact that we need to address these issues to make it as fair as possible.
Great. And Crispin, I know that you may want to add something there.
Yeah, I think just touching on what Keshav just mentioned, we talk about sustainability and these challenges, but we often and too often we forget about the farmer. We forget about the human being who is responsible for driving these sustainable outcomes. And so if we're going to wrap this up into one challenge, it's the fact that, as Keshav said when he first started earlier in this panel, is that 25 million people are disenfranchised and distanced from the sustainable cotton industry and the world. And we've got to connect with those individuals to understand what they need to run their businesses efficiently and effectively and run and deliver on sustainability. So let's, if we're going to say one challenge, we forgot about the people part of cotton. And that is so essential to driving sustainability outcomes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree. And I think I have a follow-up question on that. And I know that we're running very short on time, but I wanted to mention tools such as LCAs, the Hague, other impact assessment tools that are focusing on the environment often do measure or the environmental impact of cotton. But my understanding is that we have a pretty narrow view if we only take these tools and we don't really dig deeper into the social issues and on the farmer level issues that cotton has. How do you think, Keshav, Crispin, Will, Sedef, if you want to add, how do we address this gap?
I'll jump in. Look, I think as farmers,
we have a special guest joining. I don't know from where. Will, sorry for the interruption. Go on.
Yeah, look, I think as farmers, we're some of the most sustainable people in the world. I've got a guest again.
I'm sorry, we have a German speaker here. I don't understand what. I'm sorry to ask the support team to. Yeah, Will, let's try again.
I think the Hague and the LCAs, those tools are there, but we measure against ourselves, and I can only speak for ourselves, but as farmers, I think we're probably some of the most sustainable people in the world. Like, our livelihoods depend on it. We've been growing this crop for 30, 40 years and intend on doing it for more. So it's really like we're constantly measuring against ourselves. What we're doing now is completely different to what we did 20 years ago. In the last 10 years, we've lowered our water use efficiency by 230%. Pesticides on the way down. So, I mean, from a farmer's perspective, we're constantly measuring against ourselves. It's just how we get that message across down the supply chain is difficult, but I know it's something that's practiced by us. So.
Yeah. And if it's difficult for you, having access to all technologies and all information tools, how is it for a farmer, a smallholder farmers in a rural community, somewhere remote? In India, Keshav, maybe. I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my view, I think the social impacts of cotton are actually not properly measured. One, there's a positive impact, and the other, there's a controversial impact. Now, the positive impact is cotton is an employment generator. It's an employment provider. It is a livelihood provider. So like in countries like India, it employs 110 man days per hectare. Per year, which is a large employment. So on one hand, it does a great deal of good, and that is never measured when you look at the social impact. But on the other, what happens with cotton producer is, in fact, like Crispin said, he's at the bottom of the ladder. They rarely get paid well. It is when you look at the market prices, when you look at the input prices are growing all the time, and profitability keeps on declining. But then when it gets to the trade, it is the post-harvest processing onwards, whether the traders or the mills or companies, to me, it looks like everyone makes good money. I mean, at least a reasonable amount of money, but the farmer stays where he is. Because in terms of fabrics, the prices are rising. Everything is good. But when it comes to the farmer, he's neglected. So on one hand, certainly it does provide livelihood. But on the other, exploitation levels can be very high. There can be a lot of gender inequality. There can be child labor somewhere. There can be forced labor in many of these countries. That's because it is a labor-intensive crop in some of the least developed and developing countries. These are issues that one must be alert to, and we must address to make it more and more sustainable.
Absolutely.
They're not measured properly. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course, and it's not measured properly. It doesn't get such a big window as the environmental impact. And I think that on this point, traceability and direct to growers models could change the way that we approach cotton issues. And we've seen a very positive trends going on in the denim sector, mostly led by the leaders in this space, like Orta and many others, to work on direct to growers programs. So Crispin, back to you. What does traceability actually mean for the cotton industry? How common is that brands know where they source their cotton from and from which farmer?
Yeah, I mean, I think traceability, of course, is another buzzword like regenerative and sustainability was. Sustainability is now the peon in these phrases. But if we're going to define traceability in the cotton sector, for me, it knows exactly the farms and or the gins that your fiber that's in your t-shirt, in your pair of jeans, in the dress comes from. And all of the stages of production from the farm to finished good. That is true traceability. That includes the product, the processes, the practices, and everything that we heard from Simon earlier about the data that can be attributed to each stage of production. That is traceability and transparency at its best. And I think the industry itself right now is only tapped into the first part of it, which is mapping. Mapping is not traceability. Mapping is not transparency. Mapping is, dots on a map, and that's about all you know. And most brands and retailers, as we've shared, only have those dots on the map for their direct suppliers. They know very little about what's happening behind those dots, meaning the other dots that transact and interact with those dots. And I don't want to get too dotty in terms of the map, but that's how I visualize it. We're at stage one.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Sedef, I know that you do have some direct to growers programs actually. What do you think are the benefits of working with this type of setup? You're muted.
Sorry. We have the program only for our organic cotton that we supply from Turkey. I mean, I don't want to say it wrong because we don't have it for the whole cotton supply.
Thanks for not greenwashing.
Yeah, from like all around the world. Yeah, no, I mean, like, because we definitely need to be transparent in that sense as well. It is so tough, especially for the cotton in Turkey, since most of them are small farmers, to reach them like one by one and to work with them. So for the organic cotton, we have a project owner, a supplier that we work with, and we can get data from them for the specific farmers. But what we do, like for many years, I really wanted to share this with you, is actually our cotton purchasing strategy is definitely based on long-term relationships with the suppliers. And I mean, over the many years, and we've been very meticulous about our cotton supplier base. And we visit at the beginning of the season, the ginners, the gins, and the farmers. And within the year as well, our cotton director makes regular visits, both in Turkey and if needed, like outside Turkey as well. And we are a member of International Cotton Association as well. So we value the contract sanctity and the safe trading regulations in that sense. But we also strongly believe in supporting better cotton farming practices as well. We've been involved with BCI from the very beginning, and we've been also involved in establishment of good cotton practices in Turkey, which is a strategic association of BCI in Turkey. And our cotton director is the chairman from the very beginning. So that's why we have a really good relationship with the overall cotton growers in Turkey. So I definitely want to repeat it again. We have direct to grower for organic, but for the rest of the cotton that we buy, especially from Turkey, we definitely have a very good understanding what's happening in the field, in the farmers.
Thank you so much. So we have 5 minutes left, and I just wanted one last comment from Will, Keshav, and actually Simon as well, who's joined us back, on how do you believe that a direct-to-grower relationship could be beneficial for the cotton sector, if you believe so? In very briefly, Will, let's start with you.
Well, I think economically, the value of the fibre should benefit the grower first and foremost. And if they can demonstrate the best practice, they should be the ones reaping the rewards. We have over 2 decades of data that we've used at a farm level, and now it's been, able to, tell the consumer, use it as a marketing tool, because it's all information that we've had, and we're now just using it to illustrate a more sort of truthful and transparent story of how the crop is grown. So ultimately, yes, I think it would work, and it will bring around real change makers to the front and the greenwashers to the back of the line.
Great, I like that. Keshav?
I think if you have the wherewithal and if you have the will to to work directly with farmers, I think that's a great idea.
Simon, do you want to share briefly? You're muted.
Let me unmute. So yeah, I think that I like it because it's back to first principles of economics, and it allows us to bring in some of the people on the right who don't like corporate social responsibility, to hand them back the people they always quote, like Adam Smith or David Ricardo, who said that the important thing in markets is to see the impacts of your investment decisions. Well, if you have a relationship with the grower, you see them, and you have to do something about them. So I'm all for it. Yeah.
Thank you. So, and to conclude, we have literally 60 seconds, maybe less each. What is the future of the cotton industry in one sentence? Sedef, let's go with you first. Sorry to put you in the spot.
No worries. I will read to be really, really fast, but we envision a regenerative future for cotton where it is grown with minimum resources, enriching biodiversity, with a positive handprint on the environment and the society.
Will, next.
I see a collective movement of growers who are in demand globally because they can scientifically demonstrate biodiversity in their soils that sequester carbon whilst producing a natural fibre. I see a growing population and potentially even alleviating poverty in some growing regions.
Wow, bold. Keshav, sorry, Crispin first.
I think that, I think the future of cotton in general, cotton will define what traceability is for the entire textile sector. I think it's been the receiver of so much criticism and misinformation that it has no choice but to be 100% transparent and truthful and honest about what it is. And that will compel all of the other natural fibers to come clean about their own issues, like deforestation in the viscose sector, like extraction of raw materials in the in synthetics, et cetera, et cetera. And so, we have a responsibility in cotton to shift the way that the sector operates. And I think that is what the future looks like. And I invite, everybody from the brands to the suppliers, to the mills, to the merchants, to the farmers to just come forward and say, look, this is the new rules of engagement and new rules of play. And that is about transparency. That's about efficiency. It's about sustainability, and it's about fairness. And that's what I envision and hope, and that's what we're working toward to drive for the sector as a transformative marketplace.
Thank you, Crispin. Keshav, and then Simon next, please. We have 1 minute left.
Thanks, Marzia. I know cotton as a livelihood crop. I know cotton as a crop that is most preferred by farmers in dryland regions because it is a drought-tolerant crop. And however hard the governments would try at, like in many given points of time in India, farmers wouldn't move away from cotton. When they were told not to grow cotton and grow something else, they still won't. So I know that the future of cotton would still be bright, not just because farmers would continue to grow it, because as a fiber, probably it is the best fiber that nature can ever produce to clothe mankind. So I think cotton will continue to be grown and cotton will continue to be worn.
Thank you, Keshav. Simon.
So yeah, well, agree with Keshav. It's a great crop. It's been around thousands of years. I would just say the important thing is that politicians, business people, every decision they take though has to ask, does this ensure that we address climate change and human rights? And then it's got a bright future.
Thank you. Well, we are just on time for our end. We've gone through a lot of topics. I thank you so much all for sharing your knowledge and tuning in all the way from Australia and different parts of the world. So thanks Fashionsustain for hosting us, and I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation and learned something. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Marzia. Thanks, Keshav, Sedef, Will,
Bye.
Simon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Marzia Lanfranchi from the Transformers Foundation for this amazing talk, actually connecting the world in one panel. Awesome job. I think we've learned a lot about the present and the future of cotton, the difficulties and the hope for improvement there. Thanks so much. Now, it's not time to say goodbye yet. It's actually time to look back a little on not only today, but the whole Fashionsustain.Conference. And as I've not only been here today, I need some help with that. That's why I'm happy that Timo Schwenzfeier, the fair director of Neonit, is with me right here. Thank you for stopping by for the big finale. Lots of pressure on us now to do amazing stuff, but we'll look back, and of course we'll leave you with a lot of announcements. Hopefully see you soon in January, all of that in a little bit. If I may, I would like to start with 3 things basically that I jotted down in between panels. What I learned today, I mean, it's obviously not everything I learned, but what I think is worth remembering, not only for me, but for all the brands and suppliers, PR directors, whoever is watching. And I think one thing that's almost like a red thread through the panels is stay true to your mission, I would say. And by mission, I mean like your brand's promise to employees, to customers, to retailers. And even, I think that's especially hard to do, even when demand is picking up, when you're like the bell of the ball, turnover is growing, you're raking in cash hand over fist, and even your head swells a little with success, right? I think those are the moments where you still, I mean, enjoy it, obviously, but remember where you came from, so to speak, and stay true to that. That was number one on my list. And the second, and I think we've heard a lot, and that's basically what the neonate community is about: search, find, and work with the right retailers. I think that it can't be stressed enough, and we've heard from Tasmin, for example, what she can provide on guidance in finding those suppliers and of course retailers who share like your vision, right? Who share your path and who know their customers. I think that's especially important. They know how to grow their customer base, and they communicate, and that's what we had in many panels, communicate with an authentic and I think distinct voice, right? It's all about communication. We had that in the panel with the German Design Council and many other steps. And the third thing is, I think, sums up what you've created, all the days and years, like this transformation a process that the fashion industry is on for many years, but it's picking up speed. And I think now it's time to don't rush things and to be patient, because a transformational process is no revolution where everything like changes overnight, right? So it's a continuous process, and we had that, for example, in the panel on the resale, the recycling. It's a hard way to achieve progress there. So I think it demands like persistence, patience, as I said, the willingness to share, like your experiences, your knowledge, your perspectives. That's why I think panels and fairs and conferences like these are so important. Share where you are at, what you've learned, prevent others from making the same mistakes. And I think we heard the term greenwashing many times, probably not only today. Forgive each other, and that includes the customers actually and their relationship with the brands, shortcomings, failures in this transformation process, right? You're not perfect overnight, probably not over 5, 10, 365 nights. We have to be patient, but we have to keep pushing. I think that's like the main 3 themes that stuck with me. How about you? You have the perspective on the whole package.
Yeah, I can only agree. At the end, be fair. Be fair with everyone. I mean, we're all in the process of learning. Just this last 3 days, and especially today for the retailers, it underlined it so much that it's all about learning. It's about cooperation, collaboration, sometimes even co-opetition. No matter if you're a competitor, learn from each other, talk to each other. We are, at the end, part of one world. It's one community. And if we can do something together for better, it's the right path. It's the solution we have. And maybe it's the only solution we have. I fully underline, or I fully support the vision or the idea of competition, because at the end, competition makes us better. Absolutely. I always want to be better than something else, someone else, whatever. But if you try to put someone down in a hard way, that's not the solution at all. No, we need to, if we are the first, if we are second, if we are third, then there's still someone behind, and make sure that these people are back on track again, and then you will get also the possibility from the leader to learn from them as well. I think this is something a conference like Fashion Sustain and all the other conferences, also like from our friends from Transformers, for example, they just show how it works. And if we can do it on a show level, on a conference level, the retailers can do it, the brands can do it. And I think this is really a very, very nice forecast as well for the future, kind of a prediction for the future how it should go, because without these kind of collaboration tools, the path to more sustainability is actually not working. And if I look back over the last 3 days, and I'm really, really happy that we will put all the videos online, because it was hard for me to follow up with everything. I can really look back into more than 20 sessions with discussions, with interviews, with keynotes, and so much more. From A like Avatar to Z like Zero Impact. We had, at Fashion Sustain, we were talking about everything what is going on. We had some kind of look backs. We had some kind of looking forward. We were talking about the status quo already. And at the end, it was kind of a premiere for all of us. It was a premiere for the Frankfurt Fashion Week, for the Frankfurt Fashion Week studio, actually. It was a premiere that we are doing Fashion Sustain digital only. Honestly, I hope it will be the last time that we do it digital only. I really want to stress the fact of making it in a phygital way, physical and digital. That's the future. And I really hope that in January we can meet both here, physical, but also if you can't come by, then you can be with us online. That's one of the master plans for the future. And at the end, I must say a big thank you. I want to say a big thank you. I want to share it with the audience as well. A big thank you to our moderators, Seems, you today, but also on Tuesday, Alex Bohn from FAZ Quarterly. Yesterday, Tim Dörpmund from Textilwirtschaft with such a nice style, Tim. I really loved it. Very, very much. And of course, thanks to all our partners, to Hess Natur, to Ökotex, to